everybody. So I'm going to be weaving today. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm so excited that we're all getting this time to craft together. And if this is your first joining our quarantine fiber group, it's really just an opportunity for you and all of us to just spend some nice, relaxing time crafting, forgetting about the world a little bit. Getting time away from the kids if that's something that you've been dealing with today, or just decompressing from your day if you've been out and about. So welcome. I'm so excited to be doing this today. And so the last two meetings that we had, I was spinning. Today I decided to do some weaving because I haven't done any in a while, and it's something I enjoy doing. I weave on a rigid heddle loom. This is a Kromsky. It's 32 inches wide, I believe. And I'm doing a scarf. I'm using, for my warp, I just have a white warp. You can kind of see it in the screen there. And I believe it's an acrylic. I bought it at arts and crafts thrift store that we have locally that I absolutely love going to. It's kind of dangerous, but I always end up spending way more money than I intended to, but it's super fun. So this is just an acrylic warp. And then for my weft, I did a small edge of this kind of artsy purple yarn that I got at that same thrift shop. And it's, I don't remember the name of this style, but it's this type of yarn that's going to add just a little bit of texture on the edges. And then for the rest of the scarf, I'm using the yarn that, if you watched the video that I uploaded to this channel, very first video, this is that yarn. And so I'm going to use this, and so it's hand spun. And then I also have this green blue hand spun that I'm going to just mix them up. I'm not sure if I'm going to do even stripes across, or if I'm going to kind of start with thin stripes and make them a little bit fatter. I tend to weave how I feel like weaving, and not necessarily with a plan, a very specific plan, but we'll see what happens. So I have and I have a new camera set up today. So hopefully you guys can get, at least if you're not a weaver and you're interested, you can get at least a look at what I'm doing here while you're doing whatever crafts you're working on at home. So I already have my shuttles loaded. And if you're not familiar with weaving, the shuttle is this wooden part that you see here with the yarn wrapped on it. Once that shuttle's loaded, you just pass it through. Here, we'll bring that down a little bit so you can see. You're just going to be passing it through, and it gives you a way to pass. Instead of having to use just small pieces of yarn, you can use a much larger piece using a shuttle. So you're not constantly having to pull from your ball of yarn. So I have my two shuttles loaded. I think I'm going to start with the green because it'll contrast with that purple art yarn edge that I have. And before I do that, if you were in our meeting on Thursday, I just wanted to show you the progress I've made on the yarn that I was spinning. So I have the single completely done. I hope those colors are coming out because they're really pretty deep, deep, deep blues, greens, and purples. And so the single's done. I'm going to ply it this week, which I'm excited about. But I've been spinning a lot, so I wanted to do some weaving for a while. So while I get started, please feel free to share in the chat what you are working on tonight, or what you've completed since our last meeting. If you were here for that, I'd love to hear about it. I am still working on that rainbow yarn from the meeting that we had on Monday, and I love it. I just have reached that point with it where I'm tired of looking at the colors for the moment. So I figure I'm going to have a fair amount of free time on my hands, and so I will get back to it when I get back to it. but I'm working on this. And, that's kind of the nice thing about doing multiple crafts, whether it's all fiber related or not, is that you always have the opportunity to find something else, whether it's because you get a little bit of creativity block or because you just get sick of what you're doing. You always have something else you can fall back on to kill the time. So I've done 2 passes of this green, and I think I'm going to start switching into the purple. Well, maybe I'll do 2 more passes of the green. And then we'll switch over to the purple. So I had a thought this week, and I'm going to share it with you guys because I think it's something we should all be thinking about. Feel free to take it how you will. If you're not interested, that's fine. If you are interested, you can start thinking about what you want to do as well. So I really wish that I could be helping with what's going on with COVID. Unfortunately, I am not in any way medically trained. I don't trust my own medical advice to myself, let alone giving it to other people. I don't sew, so I can't make masks. And my husband is the whiz at the 3D printer, not me, so I cannot print face shields or other parts that they're opening up to the public to create for the hospital needs. So I was trying to think of what I could do. And unfortunately, right now, there's just not much I can do. But what I thought about was that after this is over, or at least has progressed into the next season, hopefully over, but we'll see, there's probably going to be a lot of charitable organizations that are going to need help. They're not getting donations right now. There may be a greater need depending on the charity. And so what I've decided to do to help, while I am also not going out unless I have to, is I'm working on projects that I can then donate to charities in my area. So I'm going to make hats and scarves. I'm going to do blankets, fleece blankets for my local animal shelter, which is something I actually do every year. But I'm going to start early this year so I can have some extras, maybe donate to more than one animal shelter, or at the very least be able to give a lot to the shelter that I normally donate to. So that is my plan for helping, because I can't actually help. And hopefully my efforts will be entirely in vain because everything is fine. But if not, that's my plan. So I just thought I would share it because it was an idea I had, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are trying to find ways to help, and it's just not our time yet. So I am preparing for when it is. All right, I ended up doing 6 passes of this green, which is fine. Like I said, I tend to weave by feel more than by any plan. Every time I try and have a plan when I weave, it ends up being a bit of a mess. So I just go by when I feel like switching colors or whatever. And actually, if you look behind exactly how it sounds when I say I just did what I felt like doing. If you remember the project that I said I was going to make for my sister for her birthday, it ended up being absolutely awful. And so I had this warp left on my loom, and I had absolutely no plan for it. I didn't want to waste it because it was very nice yarn. But it wasn't going to work for the project that I had in mind. So I grabbed a bunch of my first hand spuns that were a little bit thicker, a little bit choppier, and I just started going to see what would happen. And that was what I ended up with. So what you can see in the camera, from this camera angle, is the bottom of it, and it follows that pattern all the way up. It was the first time I had ever really achieve something that was A, small enough to hang on the wall, and B, that I really enjoyed the outcome in colors that I that my husband would be willing to let me hang on the wall. I like bright, I like neon. He's a little bit more subtle than I am, so. Pardon me. I am now moving on to the purple, and I think, so I did 6 passes of the green, and let me see if I can get that in the camera. I have a bad habit of leaving stuff, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So I've got 10 passes of this real thin purple that I showed you at the beginning. Then I've done 6 of the green, and this is just a basic going through the shed and coming back. So now I think I'm going to do 2 passes of the purple and then switch back to the green and see where I go from there, how that makes me feel. Which sounds a little hippy-dippy, I guess. I can be hippy-dippy, I won't lie. I like a little bit of do what you feel. But for the most part, it's because I'm a relatively new weaver. I started weaving about 2 or 3 years ago, and I never really learned in any way that could be considered a classic way. So doing what I feel 9 times out of 10 is doing the wrong thing, but it's the thing that seems to make sense to me at the moment. And since I don't necessarily know what the right way to do something is, that's where I end up, which is how I learned my own weaving technique. With spinning, I'm a little bit more of a planner. When I spin, I think about, before I start spinning, I try and think about how I want the colors to look, how I really want the yarn to look when it's finished, because number one, I understand the technique a little bit more. I've been doing it longer. And number 2, because I always feel like if I don't plan my yarn, it ends up being something that I don't want to use. Whereas when I don't plan my weaves, they tend to come out better. So that is how I do it. My first weave ever, well, let me think here. It's probably my second weave, because I think my first weave was a scarf. It's just back and forth, one color all the way up. Because I think that's kind of how we all start as adults. When you're a kid, you do the potholder weaving and that kind of thing, which is all based on the same theories, by the way. It's just a matter of growing into bigger and better equipment. This is probably all the further I'll grow in weaving, because I like the rigid heddle, but you can get much bigger, much more detailed, and come up with some really beautiful stuff. Anyway, so my first weave was, I decided I wanted to make placemats for my mom and my sister of the American flag. And my mom loves the American flag. She particularly likes when it's the older, kind of weathered colors, like not pure white, but, oh, hi, Marla. It's nice to have you here. Not pure white, but that gold kind of antique white and blue and red, obviously, because that's the American flag. And I didn't know anything about weaving. I had rented the wheel I had rented the loom from the guild that I belonged to, that I had joined because I spin. And they gave it to me, no instructions, nothing, because that's not really their job. And I just brought it home and started trying it out. And so I didn't know how to make the blue section of the flag with the stars, because I had this antique colored white warp, and then I was doing red stripes across, and then I would do white, and then I would do red. And then when I got up, I was like, oh, I don't know how to do it. So I brought the blue in, and here, I'm going to turn this like this. I would bring the blue in on the left side, not the right. And I would just kind of bring my shuttle up through and just yank it back, because I didn't know how else to do it. That's incredibly the wrong way to do it. And I started getting frustrated. I ended up just settling for doing 2 wall hangings, one for my mom, one for my sister. But every time I see them, no, I did 2 placemats for my mom. But every time I see them now sitting out, I think, that edge looks so bad. And it's that feeling of a little bit of embarrassment because you didn't know what you were doing, but then a little bit of pride because you realize now, oh, that's what I should have done, which is how, now that I know how to have two colors in one row, that's how I was able to do those triangles that you see in the weaving behind me. And so it's this really funny mixed feeling when I see them put out these early projects that I did, because I always think, oh, I'm so embarrassed. They're so bad. They're so bad. But at the same time, I had no clue what I was doing. And it looks like an American flag. It just looks like a kind of chunky, choppy American flag. So anyway, all right. So I've done my 4 passes already. So I'm going to bring this back through. So I want an extra one. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to do thick green, thin purple, thick green, thin purple, thicker green, thinner green, thicker purple, so that every time it's a different different size stripe, but always contrasting between the two colors. So we'll see how it turns out. And I have a habit, so there are lots of different ways. Oh, thank you, Marla. I think that they love them too. Actually, that's not true. I know that they love them. They're always appreciative when I make stuff for them, and I'm always appreciative when they make stuff for me. But it's just one of those things. It's that personal, you get better at a craft and you realize, I should have waited and made it a little prettier before I started gifting. So if you're a weaver, or if you're interested in weaving, one of the things that people recommend is that you buy what's called a beater. And it's a comb that usually is made of wood. I'm sure they make them out of other materials. The ones that I've seen are wood. And they tend to be very expensive, probably because they're made out of wood. But you don't have to buy those. So I had inherited a wooden beater that had 4 teeth on it. And I would use it to beat my weavings down, and I would drop it. And every time I dropped it, I would lose a tooth. Every single time, until it has no teeth left now. I still have this piece of wood that used to be a beater, but it has no teeth. So I was looking online, what do I do? What do I do? And somebody recommended getting, let me see if I can get, someone recommended a pick, like a hair pick that you get for 20 cents. I think I got 4 of them for 79 cents at Walmart. It works great. It never breaks. And if it does, I won't feel nearly as bad because it's not made of wood. And it's not this beautiful piece of wood that's been slaved over to make. It's just this probably stamped piece of plastic. Yeah, probably stamped. And I'm a beater. I like to beat each row because I feel like it gives me a better end result, and it helps me keep an eye on my edges. You do not have to, and a lot of the other videos that I've seen and a lot of other weavers that I've seen do not use a beater in addition to their reed on every single row. So if you see me doing that a lot and you're like, oh, why does she keep doing it? She doesn't have to. I like the result that I get from it, but it certainly is not required. So just so you know. Oh, I have those scissors for a reason. Okay. Also, the other thing is a lot of people will carry, when they're switching colors like this, they'll carry their yarn up, and that way they don't have to have so many cuts or so many tails that they have to weave in. It depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This one is free form. Just when I feel like switching colors, I'm going to. So I'm going to keep snipping my ends because I don't know how far I would have to travel that one up. I might do 10 rows of the green now, and it ends up having to come all the way up here. So if I'm doing something like a houndstooth pattern, houndstooth is you switch every 2 rows, you switch your color. So your warp is it switches colors every 2 rows, and then your weft is going to switch colors every 2 rows as well, and you end up with the houndstooth pattern. That one, I would just keep traveling my yarn up versus snipping every time because I know when I'm going to change colors again. This one, I don't know, so I'll just keep snipping. At least until I get a pattern in mind, like a solid idea in mind. Because right now it's still being formed. So, also, these shuttles are a little small for the size of the project that I have on here. But the only other shuttles I have are about that long, maybe a little bit longer. They are from end to end as wide as my loom is. And I thought about loading those ones because it would be easier to pass through. But I was afraid that I would keep hitting my camera with the shuttle. So I decided, I'll fight it in here. So, okay, there we go. So that's what I'm working on. What are you guys working on? Anything fun? Well, I hope it's something fun. If you're crafting, it should be fun. Because that's why this isn't our job, right? It's just our hobby. Because if my job was to weave every day, I don't know that I would do very well in that job. I love weaving when I love weaving. And when I don't love weaving, I spin. When I don't love doing that, I crochet. And when I don't love doing that, I probably learned something new. I think next week I'm going to do ribbon weaving in our meetings because that was another one. And I think I mentioned this when I was trying to learn how to ribbon weave. I don't know why I can't say ours today. When I was trying to learn the ribbon weaving technique, I had so much trouble finding information. And I don't exactly know why. It shouldn't have been nearly as hard as it was. It seems like it would be a craft that a lot of people would enjoy doing, that it would be worth making the videos for, or instructions online, anything. But I did not find any. So I think I will demonstrate that in our next meeting, just so you have the opportunity to see it. I am in no way an expert. I think I've done 6 of them total, maybe, if I'm being very generous to myself. And most of them required me to redo a lot. But it's just a neat thing that I've only seen once before in person. And that was at the West Austin studio tour last year. One of the other ladies in the guild had done some similar ribbon weavings that I just thought I fell in love with. And then I got busy doing other stuff throughout last year. And this year I was like, this is my time. I'm going to figure out how to do this. I was making a gift for a friend, and I thought that would be a perfect opportunity to try something new because, like I mentioned before, I tend to try new projects to give to other people. And I fell in love with doing it. And so I think I'll keep trying new things and see what happens when I play with the colors. But that is what I will be doing. Probably not on Thursday. I have been doing a meeting on Thursday afternoons as well for the people who maybe are putting the kids to bed right now, that kind of thing. And I will probably weave on that meeting. But next Monday, I think I'll do a ribbon weaving because it's just fun. It's easy. It's small. You don't need a lot of space to do it. And you don't need a lot of expensive equipment, which I also appreciate because so much of fiber and the fiber world is expensive equipment. Spinning is expensive. Weaving is expensive. Crochet doesn't have to be expensive, but once you figure out what quality yarn feels like and how many hand-painted yarns there are out there that are just absolutely beautiful, it starts to get more and more expensive as you go. And then that stash starts to grow. And then you realize your stash can never grow too much. And it's a vicious cycle. We've all gone through it. So this one's fun, cheap, and a quick project. Oh, I don't know if you heard that. My dog just woke up and made a weird noise. You all right, buddy? That one's Boomer. And I don't know if you can see him hiding behind the pillow over there, but that's Pickles hiding back there. So we've had Pickles for about 1.5 years now. He was a rescue from a hoarding situation. He had mange when they found him, and he was they found him with 2 other dogs in a hole inside the hoard. And so when they took him back to the shelter and started dealing with the mange and everything else, they also discovered that the dogs that had been rescued didn't know how to eat out of a dog food bowl. The volunteers had to throw the food on the floor to get them to eat. And I tell you all of this, not just to say, oh, they're sad puppies, because we all know that, I think, but because it's amazing that now he sits there quietly, he eats from his bowl, he cuddles up to us, and he loves us. And it just, every time I see him doing something cute, I have to point it out, because it took him it took him the last 1.5 years to get to this point. So Rumpus is also doing well. He's resting off camera, but he's doing very well this week. Also, he is the foster dog that we're taking care of right now. He has gained a little bit of weight, which the vet is very happy about. And he's been taking his medicine without fighting me too much, which is also nice. So he's doing well, even though you don't see him today. And Boomer is the one on the floor, and he's a little bit older now, and so he's pretty quiet and low-key, although he wasn't when we got him. So I've got, I don't even know how many rows I've done. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. So this will be 10 of green. I think I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'll do a nice thin purple and see what I think of that. So the one thing that is so frustrating to me when it comes to weaving is not the weaving. The weaving is easy. You can see, as I've been talking to you guys, we got stuff going on here, and I've still done, what is that, about 4 inches? And it'll just keep going. This is going to be about a 6-inch long scarf, or 6-inch. That would be a scarf for a baby. No, it is a 6-foot long scarf. So it's going to be a nice long one. I like scarves that you can just do this with and feel all cozy and warm. So anyway, it goes really fast when you are weaving. The problem is if you make a mistake or decide you don't like something and you have to pull it out, that is the most frustrating process, because it's hard. You got the weft that's wrapping itself over. So you still have to be moving your reed up and down to pull out what you've done. And then those fibers, as you're beating the yarn down and all of that, those fibers are starting to lock together, so it'll get stuck. Oh, it's the most frustrating thing. So most of the time when I end up with something that I'm like, I don't know if I'm a fan of how that came out, I just keep going, because I don't want to spend the time ripping it out. When it's crochet, if I need to rip it out, I just, and it's out. But not with this. Oh, see, there's Boomer back there now. You can kind of see him. Here, say hi. Yeah. I call him my fluff butt, because he's just super fluffy. So. All right, so 2 more passes, and then I'll switch back to that purple. And the purple is not a solid purple. It was a fractal spin that I did, so the resulting yarn is barber pole, and it goes from a pale gray blue to purple and then back again. But because it was a fractal spin, it is definitely more dark than light. So it should come out looking not solid on this weave, but at least consistent as I go through this weave. So hopefully we can all dream that it ends up being perfect, right? But to be honest with you, when I do handmade stuff, I like when it's not perfect. I want it to be done well. I want it to be done right. I don't want it to be perfect. If you want it to be perfect, you can go to about 14 gabillion stores, and every single one of them will offer you an absolutely perfect version of whatever project you're making. Doesn't really matter which one. I like when it's got a little bit of, what do they call, on King of the Hill, they call it wabi sabi. Little bit off kilter. So I don't want it to be perfect, but I like when things come out at least clean. Come on. See, that's because this shuttle's too short. But my plan is to convince my husband, once he is no longer working on face shields, to try printing me some shuttles on our 3D printer to see how well they work. I don't know if they will be as durable as these wooden shuttles, because the filament, the material that is used on a 3D printer, can sometimes be brittle, and you want your shuttles to be on the thinner side. But I want to try it because it would be nice to have different sized shuttles for different projects, even though technically between these shorter ones and the longer ones that I have, I could do any project with them. But these would work better if they were 2 inches longer, and my long ones would work better if they were 2 inches shorter. So, and I'm almost to the end of that shuttle. So what I always do here when I get to the last part of the yarn is I try and see how far I can go. I just eyeball it a little bit to see if it's worth continuing or if I should just stop where I'm at and either reload the shuttle if I'm still using that color or move on to the next color. And in this case, I'm going to move on to the next color because it's not quite long enough to do 2 more passes, and I like to keep it even when I can because it helps me know where to start when I get back. Because if I do all my passes even, so 2, 4, 6, 8, then if my shuttle is in the upright position when I stop, I know that I'm going to be starting on the right side when I come back to it. Excuse me, no matter if I've got a color going or I've finished the color like I have on this one. If you do odd numbers, sometimes you end on the right side or the left side. And for me, it means that I will end up making a mistake down the line. So to avoid that, I just always do mine in even. I haven't come across the situation yet where I had to switch and move to doing odds, but if I did, I could do that. I mean, it's not impossible. It's just, for me, it's easier because sometimes with weaving, I will start a project, walk away from it for a week, and then come back to it because it is something that's really good for idle time versus when I feel like I need to get something done. Then I tend to work on spinning. Although this weekend we watched Tiger King, which I'm going to highly recommend. I am going to give the warning of language. If it's not something that something that makes you uncomfortable, you will absolutely hate it. And also animal abuse warning, because these are untrained people taking care of tigers, and unfortunately, not everybody, including the tigers, make it out in 100% condition. However, with that being said, it was an absolutely riveting docuseries. Hilarious, except for the sad parts. And I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. It's just ridiculous. And the story, it gives you a beginning, a middle, and an end. You definitely get closure on the story that they've told, but there is more happening now in 2020 that is going to make this story even bigger and continue going, at least I think, for another 6 or 8 months. So they're already talking about doing a season 2 to cover after the docuseries what happened. I think they will end up doing it. So watch the show now so you can see what you have to look forward to in the next season. And in case you don't know, Tiger King follows the story of Joe Exotic. He owned a zoo in Oklahoma. He ran for President of the United States in 2016, and he ran for governor of Oklahoma in 2016 or 2017. I can't remember which, but it's just very entertaining. Highly recommend it. But while I was doing that, because I was getting all geared up watching it, it was just so exciting and kind of angering and triggering and all those other things. Spinning was really good for that because spinning is this calm, productive act, and I don't really have to think when I do it, but I can see the immediate result. When I weave, you can't always see how far you've gone because once I fill up this section here, I'll wind it on to this bar, and I can't, and then up at the top here, we'll scooch it back a little bit. Up at the top here, I can't see really how much warp I have left because I have layers of butcher paper in between to keep it all flat and even. So because of that, you don't always feel as productive, even though it moves quickly. And so this weekend, while we were watching Tiger King, I spun the rest of that roving that I had, and then I worked on a couple of basic beanies for my donation plans. So I've done 3 passes, and I think I'll do, I did 4 here. I think I'll do 6 passes. Well, yeah, I'll do 6 passes. Why not? Okay. Got that up. I'm going to grab some water real quick. Sorry about that. It's weird having the camera over here because I have my TV set up so that I can read if you guys comment. I can also see the picture better to make sure, like right now it's getting dark outside, to make sure that you guys can still see me, that it doesn't get too dark in the room, anything like that. Anyway, so I keep looking there expecting the camera to be there because I can see myself in my periphery, and I forget to look at the actual camera, which is right in front of me. Because I use my laptop camera. Where am I? There I am. So I don't know about where you guys are. We had beautiful weather over the weekend. It was just very nice spring weather, partly cloudy, 70s. And then today it has been storms, rain, not bad storms, nothing dramatic, but just a couple claps of thunder, rain coming down all day, gloomy, 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 gloomy gusts. And it's always so depressing when that happens. I used to love rainy days, but I lived in a place where we didn't get a lot of them every year. And now where I live in Texas, we don't get a lot of rain, but we get enough that you'll have a week of clouds, 2 weeks of clouds sometimes, and I just want to see the sun. So I'm hoping tomorrow the sun comes out and everything will look bright and green from all this rain that we got. I have been, because we've had such nice weather, and I know that there are some people around the country right now that have been getting some crummy weather, so I apologize about that. But we've been having we've been blessed this year with some very nice weather. And if you don't know me, I have a black thumb when it comes to gardening. And this is not a lie and it's not an exaggeration, I killed basil in 4 hours. 4 hours, it went from green to black. Now, technically, it was the 30-degree temperatures that blew through that night that made it turn to black. However, I didn't know that that's what happens to basil, and I just left it outside. So I bought it, and I killed it in the same day. So last year, I decided to plant some snapdragons because I love them. I don't even know why. I just think they're very pretty. And I thought, well, I bought them with buds on the plants. I'll plant them. They'll flower. They'll die. And I'll buy new ones next year. Somehow, and I think it's because I haven't touched them in about 9 months, they are thriving. I have these beautiful orange flowers in my flower bed in the front yard, and I'm so excited and I want to do more. And then I'm like, oh, but I know how I garden. And if I touch it and if I get excited, I might end up killing everything. So right now I just have these beautiful dragons, snapdragons. And hopefully I can keep them alive by not doing anything because they're absolutely gorgeous. They're orange and pink. And I just really like the way they're coming out. So this weather is nice because it's taking care of the flower bed that I get to have all the credit for because people see it when they drive by and I don't do anything to it, because if I did something to it, it would probably mess it up. And then we have, in Texas, we have a lot of wildflowers. They're gorgeous. I'm sorry, I was looking for my shovel. Okay. They're gorgeous. We get, of course, bluebonnets, which is our state flower, but we also get these cute little purple flowers. I don't know what they're called. If you know what they're called, please tell me. And we get, I believe they're called Indian paintbrushes. I hope that's the right name. They're red. And these little yellow flowers that are beautiful. And so this time of year is always really nice. We get this rain, and then for the next 3 or 4 weeks, the whole state just has these beautiful flowers on the side of the road, just growing everywhere. And then they all, stop blooming because that's what flowers do. And eventually we just get drought because it's Texas and everything turns brown for the next 9 months. And then thankfully, spring comes again and we get more wildflowers. So you can see me reloading my shuttle. And again, if weaving is something that you're interested in, you can load the shuttle any way that you want. This style is the one that I found works best for me. So I'm just running it through the top and then bringing it down the opposite side and back, running it through, bringing it down the opposite side to the back and up. And all that does is it just makes it easier when you're weaving to wind off of the shuttle as you're making your passes. But some people will just wrap around the middle. That's fine too. Some people, I'm sure, have other techniques. Probably some people have other styles of shuttles too. I've never seen one except for a very specific kind that's a lot thicker. But of these types of shuttles, this is the way that I've always seen them look, and I just prefer that technique. So then if you can see this yarn that I have down the center here, that was when I first started wrapping. And the only reason I go down the center first is because it helps me to hold the yarn on to get the wrap started. But once I have used up all of this yarn on the sides, this will come off the shuttle very, very easily. And sometimes that can be frustrating at the end of the shuttle. But I'll only ever do 2-3 wraps that way, just to give me a starting off point. So I think with this one, I did 12 here. I think I did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down here. So I think on this one, I'm going to do 18. So I'm going to keep building up. And then at some point, I'll start building back down and building the purple passes up. So I'm going to do 18 passes on this one. You guys are so quiet today. What are you guys working on? I'm dying to know. I have a friend who is not a crafter, and she's always admired crafts that I've done or that other people do, not just me, but she's not really a crafter. And so I was telling her earlier today about my idea of making stuff in advance, expecting there to be a greater need this year for donations than maybe we saw in previous years. And she was like, well, let me know if I can help. I said, well, if you want, I can teach you how to crochet. We don't live in the same place anymore, but we have video phones nowadays. So I can teach you how to crochet and you can make hats. And she went, I think I'll pass. Not her thing. And I said, well, you can do fleece tie blankets. Those are really easy. And it's something to do while you're in quarantine. And she got real excited about the idea. So I think I'm going to get to teach her how to do those. And we all know that that first craft is just the first taste. And then all of a sudden the world of possibilities opens up. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited to get to teach her how to do that. So let's see. This yarn, and I'm wearing a dark shirt, so it's kind of hard to see. This was a hand spun that I did. I believe it's merino and bamboo. I'm pretty sure that it is, but it's not. It was one of my first. There we go. There we go. It's one of my first yarns, and there's a lot of variation in thickness. You can kind of see it there, and so I hope it doesn't make my weaving all wonky. We'll see. I always have trouble with my edges too because they tend to pull in, but I have found I am so sorry. I have a dry spot in my throat today that just doesn't want to go away. But I have found that when about every second or third pass, I will just grab the edges of my project and just give a little tug, not yank, just a little tug to make sure that I haven't pulled any of my passes so tight that they're holding those edges in. And it seems to even them out. I'll still get a little bit of that whoop, but instead of it being whoop, it's closer to a very gentle one. So that's how I do it. And like I said, I'm not in any way a professional or an expert weaver. I just do what I think works for me, or sometimes what I see other people do, of course, because I do enjoy watching Sayori videos because it's a very interesting technique. It's not always my style, but I like the idea that you can do whatever you want, which is pretty much what I do. But I think the one plus side to not being an expert is that I will try things that you're not supposed to do and just see what happens because I don't know that you're not supposed to do them. So one time I was working on a very, 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 very large piece. I think it ended up being about 14 feet, 12 feet maybe long, and I was somewhere in the middle, and I couldn't remember what I had done at the beginning. So I was like, well, how am I going to see it? I need to see so I can make sure that I'm not messing up what I'm doing now. So I pulled it off to see what would happen. I unhooked my bar down here and just unwrapped the whole thing and went, oh, okay, that's what I did, and then wrapped it back up and kept going. I didn't find out until about 6 months later that you're really not supposed to do that because it messes with the tension. And I never would have done it had I known that you're not technically supposed to do it, but it worked. It solved the problem that I needed to solve. And I didn't think the end result was affected that much by it. Of course, I weave on a rigid heddle loom. And so my weaves are not super complicated when it comes to pattern. And because of that, I don't know if they rely on the tension the same way that something on an 8 treadle loom would require the tension. You know, it's different because I'm not weaving these gorgeous fleur-de-lis and things like that people can do that I'm so jealous of. I'm just doing a straight back and forth kind of weave. Might add a little flair to it, but it's still just a back and forth. So that might have something to do with it as well. That it doesn't have the same requirements on a rigid heddle. But I just remember telling a friend of mine, "Oh yeah, I just pulled it off to see what it looked like," and she went, "You did what? Oh my gosh, how did you make it work?" I don't know. I just wrapped it back on. And it just goes back to, we always learn something new and go, huh, well, at least I made it through. This is coming out looking a little bit St. Patrick's Day-y. So I've got the green and purple in there. Huh. We'll see what happens. I also have this blue that I could add in as a little accent color along the way if I wanted to. This one is definitely merino bamboo, and there's a little bit of Angelina or Stellina in there that's got some nice glitter to it. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. Oh yeah, you can kind of see it on the edge there. So I have this too, and this was also a hand spun that I did. The name of the lady that did these bats is, I think, the Butterfly Girls. They have an Etsy shop. Their bats are gorgeous. I'm pretty sure it's called Butterfly Girls or Butterfly Sisters. They make some of the prettiest bats I've ever seen. I've probably bought more bats from them than I have from any other independent blenders. Dyers is a little different story, but from an independent blender, I think I've bought more from them than anyone else. And their their fibers always spin up beautifully. You never get a lot of slubs or junk in there, which I appreciate. And they're just gorgeous. I went to a show in Dallas about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Anyway, I went up to their shop and I was like, I was here just to see you guys. I'm so glad you're here. And I ended up buying like 3-4 bats from them. And they all have this look to them with or at least the ones that I've seen, I should say, with the merino, the bamboo, and some type of sparkle. But the colors that they come up with are so good, and they're never solids. So this one, you can kind of see there's different shades of blue. There's a darker blue kind of down here, and then this up here is more like a sky blue almost, or yeah, it's a sky blue, like a nice bright blue sky. And so because of that, you end up with these really nice yarns that aren't solid, but you could use them as a solid without running into a lot of, oh, this doesn't really fit. This part doesn't really fit in there. I love them. They're absolutely gorgeous. So anytime I go to a show here in Texas, I always see if they're going to be there because they're one of my favorite booths to go to. They're just beautiful. So, all right. And in fact, no, the other one, the green one wasn't. So I do like blended fiber yarns. Bamboo is a really nice fiber to mix with merino. I've also had it with BFL. I think it was BFL. And I really enjoyed that blend as well. I've tried doing some blends myself, and they're always fun. I do them on my drum carder, and it's fun. It's hard to find the right balance, though. You have to get a bat that's or a roving, I guess, that's really well balanced, because if not, you'll end up with a big clump of bamboo in the middle of this merino yarn. And that bamboo, when you spin straight bamboo, it comes out almost like linen, the feel of it. But for some reason, when you mix the bamboo with another fiber, it just adds this slick, soft, almost silkiness to it. And it's interesting how it can change the properties of another fiber, and that fiber changes the properties of the bamboo. But if you work with just bamboo, which I have before for a special project someone commissioned me to do, I spun the bamboo and it was like the tree bark that it is. And it was just amazing because I love bamboo as a blend. I've also done blending with silk and rose fiber, which the rose cellulose fiber is some of the softest. Silky isn't even the right word for how it feels because it's so slick. I cannot imagine anyone spinning just rose fiber because I think it would be it. You can barely hold on to it the way it slips through. But when you add that to a merino or a BFL, even a rambouillet, which is already a very nice fiber, the end result is so soft, so luxurious. And then on top of that, the rose fiber has a sheen to it. I'm not going to say natural sheen because I don't know if that's a property of the rose cellulose that makes that sheen or if it's added in the production process. But it has a sheen to it, so it gives extra life to whatever merino fiber or whatever fiber that you're using. Even if that fiber's dyed, it still gives it a shimmer. And I absolutely love working with it. So that's another one that is fun to play around with if you're on Paradise Fibers or Laughing Lamb and going, what can I try new today? That's a good one that that is getting a little bit more popular now, but I think still kind of sits outside of what we normally think of when we think of spinning fibers. So, all right. Well, you know what, guys? We're right just shy of an hour, and I think we're going to end here. I hope you guys had a productive meeting. I know I did. I've gotten a good 6 inches in on this weave, and I'll show you guys where I'm at so far. Let's see if I can bring this around a little bit. Let's see. It gives you kind of an idea. Oh yeah, you can see that just fine. So we've got this lighter purple here. That was that art yarn. It's got a nice, almost bumpy texture. And then this is the green. And since the warp is white, it's coming out a little bit lighter, which I appreciate. And then we have that darker purple in there as well. So that's where I got to. I would love to see where you guys got on your projects. So feel free to share them on Instagram or in the comments here on YouTube, whichever you prefer. And subscribe to the channel to get notified when we go live. Our next meeting will be Thursday at 1 p.m. But if you can't make that one, we will also be meeting next Monday. And I am going to stick with this schedule through the end of April. And then if everybody gets back to having more life to worry about, then we can always switch it up and maybe we'll just do once or twice a month. But for now, we're going to stick to 2 times a week. Feel free to join one, both, or neither. And thank you guys for coming. I hope you have a great night and a great rest of your week. So I'll hopefully see you on Thursday. Bye.